This is Dodie from Deliberate Aging. Welcome to my podcast. Today I have the privilege to interview Nancy Candea, who is a living example of a woman making deliberate choices to age well. In addition, through her work in various roles, she is helping others to do the same. So Nancy, thank you for joining me today. I want to start off with one quote from your book. And it says this. It says, at the age of 60, Nancy can swing a pickaxe, build stone walls, live through winters with hardly any heat, and hang off the edge of the roof to see the birds nested in the beams, proving to herself that getting older doesn't mean declining. Now, I love that quote. So let's use this as a segue for you to introduce yourself and tell us about yourself, but also if you're comfortable adding in your current age as well.
Oh, Dodie, thank you for having me. I'm super happy to be here, and wow, that was a fun place to start. Thank you. So I'm 63, and sometimes people say you don't look 63, and my response is yes, I do look 63. That at all ages we have looks, and I'm proud to be 63, and I'm not yearning to look any younger than 63. So that's how I want to get started here. And a little bit about me. I'm a retired dancer. I retired at 45 from choreographing and making shows. And then my life turned into the life of a yogi, as a yoga teacher and a yoga therapist and a yoga teacher trainer. And then just recently, after I wrote the book, I actually went back to school and got my master's. And so I'm a clinical social worker working with adults and couples and in family therapy. So that's kind of the newest version of me. But all of this has been working with women. I do have some male clients now too, but my life has really been a lot about working with women. And I think that my focus, even in therapy, but even in my work still as a yoga therapist, is helping women in the second half of life on their journey, because we don't have a lot of guideposts, a lot of instructions to tell us how to do this in our Western culture.
Interesting. Okay. I like it. So in your book, which is fascinating, by the way, you describe a holistic approach to health that has 5 separate components. So can we talk about each one of those separately? I'll list them in order. There's exercise, eating well, relaxation, productive mental processing, and life purpose.
Yes, I love talking about those. I consider them the 5 points of wellness, and I came about those when I was a yoga therapist, but I still use them as a psychotherapist in my work too. And so starting out with exercise, really what exercise does is it helps us with our ability to biologically function at our top level. So from the point of, increasing our muscle mass to looking better, to having better energy. I know in my younger years, exercise was all about looking better. But now the science is out that our exercise helps with our cognitive abilities. So everything from depression, anxiety, to how we process as we get older depends on our muscles being strong. And that's science. All the science of longevity, like number one thing, exercise. And so with my clients who don't have, whether they're yoga therapy clients or psychotherapy clients, if they don't have exercise in their self-care, what I encourage them to do is turn on a timer and walk away from your house as fast as you can for 10 minutes. And then you get to come home, and try and turn this into a daily habit. And pretty much what I get from people is, I see them a week later, they're like, yes, my life improved. And so just addressing our mental health on this biological level of what makes our brain work better, what increases our mental health on all levels, is number one, is exercise.
I like that. I know specifically one of the lines in your book, you say you work your body so you can take care of your mind. And so I think you just explained that, but that's also something that I totally agree with, because I've always said that exercise is my therapy. It helps me to get rid of my stress.
Exactly. Exactly. The way it works on the nervous system. And that's like, the nervous system is our main communication system in our body. It takes in information from the outside. The brain processes it and sends it out to our hormone system, our digestive system, our cardiovascular system. And so when we exercise, the effects it has on how our nervous system processes stress from the outside, stress even from the inside. It's all science now. We don't even have to go, well, I'm not sure if it works. Oh, it absolutely works.
Okay. So how about point number 2, eating well? What are your thoughts on nutrition?
Yes. So I have a lot of thoughts on eating well. And when I say eating well, it means, yes, eating foods that are nutrient dense. And that's basically whole foods. I don't say like vegan, vegetarian, whatever anymore. It's basically a plant-based diet, which is also an anti-inflammatory diet. And it's those things that are on those lists that are, nutrient dense, they're high fiber, but if they also we have to be able to digest them. So there's so much science out about gut health these days, which is also an integral part of Ayurveda, which is part of a yogic lifestyle. But our gut health, the gut microbiome needs to be healthy to digest these foods. So that's kind of like a two-pronged approach. You're eating that broccoli, but can you digest it? Like, my body wants nothing to do with broccoli that's not cooked very well. It's not going to digest it. It's going to with digestive issues, make me feel anxious. But that broccoli cooked in that right way, right? I'm a pescatarian. I don't eat meat. I don't eat dairy. Dairy doesn't feel good in my digestive system anymore, no matter what I do. So I can take a digestive enzyme if I do end up having a little bit. But I'm also, I have a lot of thoughts about how our diet is also hooked up to the health of the planet. So if I'm going to eat some food, I want to make sure that the food I eat is high fiber, and that I also have high protein, which is why I eat fish sometimes. And I do also eat, eggs, preferably eggs from chickens in my neighborhood. But I really want to make sure as I get older, my body needs less calories, but more nutrient dense foods. And the other equation is our gut health is important because in our gut, we produce a neurotransmitter called serotonin. And serotonin is one of the happy hormones, like dopamine. And serotonin is produced in the gut. So if we don't have good gut health, we're not going to produce serotonin. This becomes really important as we get older and we say, I'm having sleep problems, because serotonin is a precursor to melatonin. So gut health is one of like the sleep hygiene, part of the sleep hygiene equation for getting a good night's sleep, is that we go to sleep and our digestion is in a good place. So like for me, like quitting eating 3 hours before I go to sleep is going to be one of the things that ensures that I have a good sleep. Also eating lighter at night not having fish, protein, which is pretty heavy to digest, is going to help so I don't have hot flashes at night. So I can tell that the foods I eat at night are particularly important to how I sleep. And part of that is that serotonin, the creation of serotonin in the gut, which is part of gut health, which is part of eating well. So it's a long, long explanation, Jody.
No, but that was good stuff, and I didn't know that link between the serotonin and gut health.
Yeah.
But one thing you talk about in the book, which I really like, is the 80-20 rule.
Yes. Yes. So important, especially for any of us who have like disordered eating tendencies, is that we really only need to eat nutrient dense food 80% of the day or 80% of the week, which gives us like, we can have a day where maybe we don't eat really well, but it's not going to affect our health. Or we can have those cookies, we can have that piece of cake, we can have those noodles. And so without affecting our health, of course, unless we're sick. If we are sick, have some kind of dis-ease in our body, we might have to eat 95% high dense nutrient foods. But generally we could just say, just give ourselves a break and just eat in a social way that makes us feel happy.
Okay. So you also mentioned something that I found very interesting, because I always think of the best food choices as the ones that are lower down the food chain, like really in their natural state, like an apple as opposed to applesauce. But you mentioned specifically that not all processed foods are bad for us.
Exactly. So there's processed foods and then there's ultra processed foods. So processed foods can be frozen vegetables, let's say. And sometimes a frozen vegetable or a frozen fruit is frozen at the height, they're taken right off of the vine or whatever and frozen right away. They might have more nutrients than, the apple or cherries that have, come over, been on a truck for a really long time and have a bunch of spray on them to keep them looking good. So frozen foods are processed. Also, fermented foods are processed, and fermented foods are usually a part of every indigenous culture, from yogurt, to sauerkraut, that's my German roots, and sauerkraut, to pickled vegetables in the Asian cultures. Pickles, I remember talking to a friend from Mexico, and they're like, my dad we always had pickles around. And so there's fermented foods in every culture, and those are considered processed foods, as is applesauce, which can be more easily digested by some people than a raw apple and can help with digestive problems sometimes. So cooking foods, we're processing foods. We don't have to eat everything raw. But then there's the ultra processed foods, which really resemble nothing. They include chemicals. They include chemicals that make us actually want to eat more of them. Oftentimes, except for the oils and your vinegars in the middle of the grocery store, the middle of the grocery store is filled with processed foods.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to kind of eat the edges of the grocery store and just dip in. But your good olive oil, of course, is like, I always pick my olive oil bottle, which I spend more money on than other things. And I say to my husband, this is medicine, because I don't want him to buy cheaper olive oil. So there are a few things in the middle of the grocery store, but the things like you said, the unprocessed versions of food, and then if we can process them at home, make that applesauce right at home. And it's like, I don't have time for that, Nancy. I get it. We just do the best we can.
Okay. Well, you just mentioned food as medicine, and that's segueing into my next question, because you do detail that in the book. You say specifically your clients like knowing that they can digest something to make them feel better.
Yes. And that just fits in with awareness. Like when you eat some foods, do they help you feel energetic, or are they kind of slugging you down? And that's where that kind of yogic awareness, what is my body feeling, that process of just noticing, like one cookie feels good. 5, I don't feel good. In the morning on a really cold day, my body wants warm liquid to warm up my body, and cold liquid just doesn't feel good anymore. And even for me, that was like the process of noticing how yogurt was making me feel congested. Like I've been eating yogurt for years and years, and all of a sudden I started to feel congested in the morning with it. And it just showed me it was my body had changed. That wasn't the best food for me to have in the morning. Even though it's a lovely fermented food, I needed to switch over to other fermented foods to start out my day.
Okay. All right, so let's move on to the third point, relaxation. One of the interesting things that you mentioned in the book is that meditation was taught to violent criminals, and they were actually able to rewire their brains towards peacefulness.
Yes. Yes. So a little bit of history on that is that in the last 25 years, after the development of brain scans, we're actually able to see how different activities affect our brain functioning. So Adrian Raine, who's a neurocriminologist out of the University of Pennsylvania, studied the brains of people that had committed violent crimes. And some of them had what was called the prefrontal cortex functioning. It functioned just like normal people. And the prefrontal cortex is the part of our brain that is able to help us live in a place of compassion, empathy, intuition. But the people that part of their brain would fire up had learned violent behavior from growing up. And then there were population in there that the prefrontal cortex, which is in yoga, it's called the third eye, but it's like the front part of your brain, the newest part of the human brain is this prefrontal cortex, actually didn't light up. And so just like we can be born with any part of our body not working, we can be born with parts of our brain not working. Another thing that is noticed is that we can have parts of our brain not work because of trauma and because of addiction, which is so, so sad. But Adrian Raine found that even in hardened criminals, meditation helped to turn on the lights of the prefrontal cortex. Dr. Dan Siegel also proved that breathing practices help turn on the lights of this prefrontal cortex. It lights up. And so we have the ability to train the brain. And I think it's almost like a side note, but Dr. Adrian Raine said at some point our society is going to get tired of the violence. And we are going to prioritize how to help people who have troubles with their brain functioning. We're going to teach them the skills that we know that are now science.
Okay, very interesting stuff. And as you keep repeating, is that now as medical advances have just progressed to this point, we can prove these things scientifically that these things are working.
Yes.
It's really interesting. Okay, so moving on to point number 4, productive mental processing. And I renamed that brain health.
Okay. I like that. Brain health. So when we look at our brain health, and we already kind of touched in on a few things, and one is that we need exercise for brain health. We need to eat well and digest our food for brain health. And that meditation actually helps that part of our brain of intuition and compassion and empathy. So those are kind of on that biological level. What I call productive mental processing is, are our thoughts in a place that moves us forward, or do we feel stuck in our thoughts? And that's a lot of my work as a psychotherapist, right? People come in and their thoughts, it's what's going on in their head, is keeping them in a state of depression or anxiety, and the various forms of how anxiety manifests in the body and in the thought process. So I use productive mental processing because it's not necessarily positive mental processing. Okay. Because we think, oh, we have to be happy all the time, but that's not true. So if we have a sadness in our life, say someone passed who we love, they died, it is productive for our mind to go through all those stages of grief and to feel like it can be there. It is productive for our mind to be very quiet at nighttime so we can get to sleep. It's not productive for our thought processes to be spinning around and thinking about a bunch of things before we go to sleep. If we are on a ride at an amusement park, our thoughts are hopefully feeling happy. If we're around our loved one, our thoughts are happy. What leads to unproductive thoughts are when we can't be responding, and there's an emotional component to this too, in the present moment to what's happening. We're depressed when we're around our loved ones. We're anxious when the lights are out and we're trying to sleep. So productive mental processing is definitely a part of brain health, but it is figuring out what thoughts are going to help us in this life. So it's not about the health of the brain per se, but it's the health of the thought process. Does that make sense?
It does. And I like what you said. It doesn't have to be positive mental processing, but it has to be productive.
Exactly. And then there's some scientifically shown things that help with that productivity, like a gratitude journal. A 21-day gratitude journal has been actually shown to help the brain process in that more, to actually like see the world instead of the cup half empty to the cup half full. So we actually have brain practices that we can do to help with that more productive mental processing, to turn it on. Sometimes we can default, especially if we have trauma in our past, if we have addiction issues, our brain actually we need to play upon the plasticity of the brain and retrain it with the other health things we talked about previous. And then sometimes I'll work with a client who has an addiction, and we actually have to be aware of what triggers that addiction over a period of maybe 3 weeks to 6 weeks in there, to help them so that they can, let's say their addiction is picking their nails, let's say. And so if we can bring in that thought awareness to that habit and replace it, and that takes mental awareness. So that's what kind of fits in with that.
Okay, so I was really misunderstood when I said I equated it with brain health. There's a link there, but it's not. It's definitely different.
It's like a smaller version, like of the whole overall brain health is an overall picture that includes the biological parts of our brain, because it is an organ. But then this part is specifically thoughts.
Got it. Okay, thank you for that clarification. Okay, so moving on to the fifth point, your life's purpose. I really like this section.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, I can teach people the first 4 things we've talked about: how to exercise, eat well, change your thoughts in your brain, relax, productive relaxation techniques. But if people don't feel a sense of purpose, it's just not going to stick. That is the most important thing. And that's what I see a real challenge for women in the second half of life. Not feeling a sense of purpose that is like an expression of their passion, of their wisdom. Maybe a little voice in the back of your head is saying, do art, or maybe there's a little voice like Dodie, do a podcast, right? And it's those things that really are our life force. I would say that is the life force. The other things support our life force, our passion. And when I talk about like the second half of life, what I'm talking about is so often for women, we've got a focus of, career, children, homemaking. And when some of those things start to go away in retirement and children leaving, changes with partners, we need, like, how am I going to do this whole second half of my life, no matter how long it is? What am I going to do to feel purpose until the day I move over to transition to the next, whatever that is? And so that's what I'm encouraging women to look at.
Okay. I know in one section of the book, you give some really great examples of women who are in the second half of their life, I assume, and they've made some pretty dramatic changes, like going back to school and getting a graduate degree or changing careers, really.
Yes.
Is it ever too late to make a change like that?
I just don't think so. I just don't think so. I think that, I've seen people, I have a client now who he's 87. I mean, I'm talking about a man now, but he's just currently in my mind because I'll see him this afternoon. He's 87. His wife died and with a long bout of cancer, so he took care of her and then ended up mostly in rehab with some health issues for a year after that. I started working with him. I went to his house. We got his weights out and we started lifting weights very slowly at first, doing balance exercises. And, this summer he was out power washing his house. And he really has a family member who he actually still has to take care of, one of his children. And that's a big purpose for him. And he made that turnaround. And I love it that he started it with exercise. So you can turn your physicality around at any time of your life. You can start eating better by just drinking 2 cups of water in the morning so that you don't have dehydration and eating an apple later in the day. You can start that process of active relaxation. And by active relaxation, I mean, it doesn't involve screen time. Some kind of mindfulness practice, which also includes meditation, but isn't always accessible to people. You can start to think about, what is my passion? What is my purpose? What can I do? How can I contribute to society at all stages of life? Like, for instance, for me, when I settle down a little bit, I'm thinking that I might go, because they need volunteers at the hospital to hold and rock babies. So as long as I have a little bit of arm strength, I could do that. And, as a spiritual person, I know that even if I can't move around, I can be saying prayers for my community, my loved ones. So there's always, one of my main values is loving kindness. I know I have so many ways I can share loving kindness with my family and my community, even if I had no money. Nothing. So the second half of my life, when I don't have to be as productive as my first half, because my kids are on their own, they don't really need me anymore. Of course, they're fine, but they're doing their own thing. And I'm in my retirement career now, hopefully, going out and maybe traveling some more as things move forward. But I'll always be able to express loving kindness, which is my purpose in the second half of life.
Okay, very good. Interesting stuff. So now kind of switching gears here a little bit, you talk about how society sees aging, specifically for women. And one thing you mention is a product that we all see in the stores every day. It's called anti-aging cream. And what does that name say to us? It basically implies that aging is bad.
I know, like a disease.
Yeah. So what do you think about that? I mean, what's the difference between the society norm and what Like, for example, you believe.
Right. I um I want that name of those products to go away. I, of course, take care of my skin. I don't want dry skin. It doesn't feel good, right? So I'm putting that lotion on and I'm using like my Ayurvedic oils on my face and my skin. I'm taking care of my skin. Definitely do that. And I don't, they've dyed my hair. People do different things to take care of, make their faces and skin look better. And I'm not concerned with any of those things. What I'm concerned with is what's going on inside of us as women. Are we afraid that we're going to lose our value to society? Are we afraid of purpose? So all the things we do on the outside, that's what I'm not concerned about. But it's this inner work. And I think one of my aha moments was I have a friend she's a psychologist, and she's also a medicine woman in the Dene culture, which is the Navajo culture. And in their culture, the older women are celebrated. All elders are celebrated, but it's the women of the culture that are celebrated with a ceremony when they turn 75. And we don't have anything like that in our culture. And my friend Alta, she's like, I don't understand this Western culture. It's brutal. It's brutal on women in the second half of life. And so we have messages, external messages, and I think there is a lot of thought out there, even from celebrities to anybody who's not making money off the anti-aging creams and things, is to shut that down, right, from society. But also it's like the cards we buy each other for our birthdays, making fun of our minds and our bodies. I think that needs to be shut down too. And really we celebrate each other in this aging process, and we learn to have a different conversation around it. And that we in the second half of life put effort into this so our daughters don't have to be afraid of aging. And so what I want to do through the work I'm doing, through the Living Boldly Project, through my work trying to help women in the second half of life, through the book, through the programs that I offer, is to help women with what's going on the inside that perpetuates this, I'm not of value, I'm invisible, society doesn't need me, because society does need us. We are packed with wisdom if we can get on the other side of our fears and insecurities.
Yeah, I know one of the quotes in your book is from Helen Mirren, one of my favorite actresses, and she says, your 40s are good, your 50s are great, your 60s are fabulous, and your 70s are effing awesome. I love that.
Yes. And one thing we know about her is that she's fit, she must eat well, and she has this purpose of saying, this is good, this age is good, but she also takes care of her biology, right? And that is something that I feel we need more. I'm so glad you're doing this podcast. We need more information so people know how to take, wherever you're at, even if you have health challenges, there is ways to take care of our biology through exercise, through eating well, and through productive relaxation. And I say productive relaxation, the productive word, but it's because screen time does not help our brain. It helps our body relax because we lay around, but it's not actually helping the brain.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so you're 63 now. So you've gone through a number of life changes. What are the most significant things that you've noticed in both your body and your mind as you've gotten older?
Great. That is a very good question. So because I've been so physical my whole life, I've seen my body go through a lot of different stages. And I think a hard part for me was letting go, because I got really sick when I was 45. It was like too much physicality. And I probably had some autoimmune stuff pop up. I was just in pain all the time, my whole body, all my joints. And I had to really make a shift. And that's when I retired from dance. Even my yoga practice slowed down quite a bit, and more work on balance, more work on like less flexibility, and more work on mobility for sure, but strength around the joints. Shifted my eating so that it was really nutrient dense. Not thinking about, like, it was always when I was younger about like keeping thin, and now it's about like brain health and joint happiness. So that's an anti-inflammatory diet. I started running during the pandemic. I felt like my body was just craving that kind of pounding, and I think maybe joint health. So really making sure, even in the practices, the classes I teach, there's exercises that focus on bone density. I make sure I get my cardio up, even if I can't go outside. So my exercise routine is definitely more varied than it used to be. I stepped into school. It was an online program. It was an intensive program that was 16 months long. I was 40 years older than most people. And sometimes I would think, oh my gosh, I'm not getting this because I'm older. Luckily, I've kept up on technology, but I realized that even the younger people were having problems with the technology sometimes. It wasn't just because I was older. The younger people would forget assignments also. And to just realize that I have to work harder, I think, now than ever for brain health. It's not that much more time, but it's more consistent. Like taking time off for 2 or 3 weeks is not an option like it used to be when I was younger. If I want my brain to be sharp, I wake up, I get it going, I do take supplements, and that has to be more consistent. But I feel, even though it's a different kind of strength, I feel just as strong as I've ever been. Maybe not as flexible. Maybe I just don't do such crazy things like I used to when I was younger because I don't like the pain. But I feel wiser. I feel more settled. And when fears of aging come up, I sit down with them and I say, Nancy, is this productive? And I sit and I think through them. And I'm afraid of things. I'm afraid of being lonely. I know I need to, keep a good sense of being a part of community that has people of all ages in it, so that I have that community as I get older. And of course, I think, like, I don't know, is this most people? We're a little afraid of being a burden to our children. I don't know. I have that thing going on in my head.
Yeah.
Whenever I say it in front of my daughters, just like they roll their eyes. I don't know.
How old are your daughters?
They're 32 and 34.
Got it. Okay. Okay. So how about this question? What would you say is the most important advice you would give to anyone out there listening on how they could stay healthy as they age?
I think to trust the science, and they don't have to go look up all those things, but get to understand, like, there are podcasts like your podcast, which is on deliberate aging, which is just such a great title. There's websites like the livingboldlyproject.org, which has all sorts of information, especially on perimenopause, and postmenopause. There's out there's people, like what you're doing is collecting information to make it easy, to make it more user friendly, and to find a community of people who will support you getting on track to take care of your body. this biological, the muscles, the heart muscle, your digestive system, your brain health, to get on that plan and get the support you need, so that's like you're taking care of your body until like maybe a couple days before you transition. You know what I'm saying? Is this is what we do in the second half of life, so that we lead a better second half of life. Our body needs more help, more care than it has ever needed. And that is the key to deliberate aging.
So, in the book, you say that you want us to learn to take care of our body and not entrust it to a medical system created for sick care, not health care.
Yes, that is very judgmental of me, isn't it? But I really actually feel like it's true, and that the medical system really needs to catch up on the science of longevity, and that we have a lot of incredible, um, medical interventions once people get sick, and there's not enough education on how not to get sick.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That going in for a yearly checkup is just a small part of prevention. And so I think that we need more community around as we get older, on communities that get together and really understand and have these conversations like you and I are having on how we take care of ourselves, because it isn't just a one size fits all. There is, even though I don't eat meat, there are some people that need to eat meat medicinally. Basically, their body needs it for some reason. And so there's not just like one voice out there. There's a lot of voices, and it can just sound so overcrowded. But to get into a place or with someone or a group of people and talk about, well, try this. Like, for instance, one of the things I always tell people to try is, please try to drink 2 cups of clear liquid in the morning before you have your caffeine. And that could be tea or water, because you wake up, your body's dehydrated, which can cause anxiety, which can cause, a sluggish, tired body. So you'll give that a try. And then somebody says, I can't do 2 cups. And it's like, well, try with a couple sips and then see if you can get up to 3 sips, 4 sips. So there's this kind of consultation about how to bump it up. For, like I said, like for the person that does no exercise, how do we bump it up? For the person who is just doing yoga, but they're not getting enough muscle tone, we need to talk and consult. Okay, so could you add some weights? Things like that there's more conversation out there to meet people where they're at and to see what works for them. I always say it's like getting a new pair of glasses. Is this better? Is this better? Is this better? Or this better? It's subtle.
Yep. Okay. And so in conclusion, I will definitely be putting all of your contact information in the show notes for anyone that wants to contact you directly. But just as a kind of a wrap up, let us know what your offerings are, because I know you have some classes and workshops, and also what is the best way for people to contact you.
Thank you. So the best way is to contact me through nancycandea.com to see what the latest things I'm offering. I always try to do group workshops for women in general. I have classes, all different levels of classes. I work as a psychotherapist, so I have a profile on Psychology Today. And I do take insurance, and I usually do some free meditations during the week, so that we have, again, community to talk to. And I'm really, again, passionate about the Living Boldly Project.org, which is a site to help people just get some more information on the second half of life.
Okay. Well, then that sounds great. Thank you for this wealth of information. It was really good stuff. And I hope that we can get you to come back on again in the future.
Absolutely, Dodie. Thanks for doing this. It's such an important service.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks for listening. This is Dodie from Deliberate Aging. Until next time, be well, friends. This podcast is presented solely for informational and educational purposes only. Use of information from this podcast is at the user's own risk. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of your physician or other qualified professional. We are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from use of this podcast.